Hello and welcome everyone on the big wide web. We have today for Paprika Festival celebrating the 20th annual festival. We have a very special star in the Toronto theater world and performance world here with us. We're celebrating with 20 questions for a friend of mine, a dear personal friend of mine who's also been a mentor for me and a great performer. Like, honestly, they are my number one kind of person to go to whenever I have a question, whenever I need to go see a great performance in the city. So I'm gonna pass it on to Sloane. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pumped up. You didn't notice already. I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited you're on the other end of it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Paprika.
Shout out to Paprika. So Ty, let's start by introducing you and your work. Tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to share about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Ani, hello, bonjour. My name is Ty, or Tyler J. Sloane, as I'm artistically, professionally known as, whatever that means. I am a Anishinaabe, Chinese, Irish, Scottish, Greek, French, mixed race, adoptee, queer, non-binary, two-spirited person. I'm also a theater maker and a multidisciplinary artist, and I'm jazzed to be here.
And we're so excited to have you. And for everyone at home who doesn't know who I am as well, my name is Maher Sinno. I am a current Paprika Festival participant. This is my first year interacting with Paprika, and I'm so grateful for it. I am also queer, non-binary, Lebanese, Muslim, immigrant to this land, and I am so grateful to be here. I am so grateful to be on this land that has been preserved for us for so many years. It's coming from a land that has been colonized and has been subject to imperialism a lot. There is such a deep connection to homeland and to land and to nature and to everything that's beautiful about one's ancestral belonging. And coming to Canada and being part of this culture and getting to know the history more and more and being immersed with the history of it, there is the need to acknowledge the shared pain and shared hurt over the years, and to the Indigenous siblings that we have here in Toronto. And for that, we want to acknowledge that this is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And today, it's the home to many diverse First Nations still, including Inuit and Métis people. So, and we also want to acknowledge, because this is a very intersectional moment in history, and everyone is all standing in solidarity with each other. We also need to acknowledge those people who came here forcibly, those people who came here because they were refugees, those who came here also are Black siblings in the community who came here through the slave trade and through many other systems of oppression. We want to acknowledge all that, and we want to say that with everything going on in the world, it's been so heartwarming seeing how everyone's coming together in solidarity, fighting oppression, fighting colonization, fighting imperialism. And for that, I'm so grateful. And there's not a better person to have this conversation today with than you, Ty. So I'm so happy to have you here. I'm so excited for this. And are we ready to get into 20 questions for the 20th Paprika Festival anniversary?
Yes. I love
Yes. There should be here a sound effect of like claps and stuff like that. Emma, note it down. Okay. So question number 1. When were you part of Paprika Festival?
As a student in 2018, and then as a producer in 2019.
Nice. And so you were in both programs, the production programs, the productions program, and what was the first one?
So actually, the first one in 2018 was the Directors Lab, led by
Nice.
Claire Preuss. And then in 2019, I was the Indigenous program producer for the Indigenous Program Day.
Oh, nice. So you're like not a participant. You were in collaborating with Paprika on that.
Yes.
Amazing. I did not know that. I thought you were a participant only. So that is exciting news. So tell us a little bit about your experience as a director for the Directors Lab.
One, it was a great experience. I got to work with Kevin Covey and Bryn Kennedy, who are like my peers in that program. And we got to learn from the brilliant downstage artistic director now, Claire Preuss, who was in Toronto at the time and living in Toronto. I love directing. I love directing theater. And I was really grateful to have the opportunity to learn from Claire Preuss and also learn from my two peers at the time. And then further with my individual project, having the opportunity to do a play based on previous romantic relationships in my life, and having Daniel Carter, Tony Tran, and Elizabeth Staples join me for that journey and be my actors for the play that I got to present.
What a bunch of amazing people. And I wish I had known you in 2018. I've met you in 2019, right? Like that was the first year that we met each other.
Yeah.
And we got to know about each other's art. And I wish I could go back in time and see that. So in terms of, so you spoke about mentorship, and that is something that we will also touch upon later on in the questions. But for now, I have a very interesting question for you. What is a trend that you, Ty Sloane, just can't get behind?
Cancel culture. And here's why. And
Yeah.
let me tell you why. Because I feel like it could be a very tumultuous thing to say in theater and in a community, but you got to figure out how to be transformative or restorative. Cancel culture is a punitive justice system tied to trauma responses. So that's why I can't get behind it. It's also Western and colonial to do cancel culture. It's capitalist.
100%. I was not expecting that, but I'm living for that answer. And I think it's something that you said is that cancel culture often affects marginalized folks more so and in a deeper way when that happens. So I think we need to acknowledge how that it can disproportionately affect people who are different or people who are misunderstood in a lot of contexts, even though sometimes it is targeted to the right people, just making sure to notice those things. So I wasn't expecting that answer, and I definitely appreciate it. There's a poem for Gibran Khalil Gibran where he speaks that punishing the punitive kind of systems that we have do not work, because it's the whole community and its whole society's responsibility to see where society failed someone. So that is a very interesting kind of reference that I thought about.
Amazing.
What is a piece of media that you could talk about for hours? So that can be, I believe, films, TV series, work of art, spoken word, whatever it is that you can think of.
I could definitely talk about queer films and TV shows, but something that I never get to talk about is my obsession with comics and comic book heroes. And so I have an obsession that I could talk for hours about The Flash, which is both a superhero and the TV show.
Nice. I am not much of a comic person myself. I've always tried to get into it. So I'll hit you up to get immersed in that culture as well.
Sure.
What do you wish you could see more of in theater?
It's gonna get really wordy. I wrote this down just for this case. Innovation backed by financing non-traditional institutional art.
I love that. What is did you say non-traditional?
Yeah, and this is like one whole group, like non-traditional institutional art.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think, I'm gonna say something super tumultuous, and this is on Paprika too. I don't think we need to fund plays or musicals anymore. I think that form of storytelling is old and white. That's what I mean, explicitly.
I have a lot of opinions on that, and I have a lot to say about that. But I work in this theater culture, so so there,
yeah.
there is a lot to say about that, though. You're absolutely correct, and I feel like a lot of the attention of also that is partly on audience members and audience goers. There is a lot of engagement in theater traditions like Shakespeare, in theater companies that promote those kind of reinterpreted versions of those traditions, which is not wrong, and I love that. But you also see a lot of marginalized theater or theater on the margins, where it's not attended as plenty. The audiences are not packed with 150 audience members every night. So I don't know if that's exactly what you were going with, but like that is something that we definitely need to resource more towards. So I definitely agree with what you're saying, I think.
Yes. And I also and that's why I put the innovation part too, right? Because it's like I say don't fund plays and musicals anymore, and all of the theater musical people are gonna attack me, I'm sure. But what I mean by that is let's innovate, musicals or music halls or plays with act structures that is limiting. I think it's limiting now in this day and age. And there's such a wealth of storytelling from different marginalized communities and queer communities. There's different forms, when we get to learn about theater of the oppressed or theater of the absurd or these other forms that were experimental and fun, it's exciting. And I think when we think of audience members, a lot of the audience members are oftentimes non-theater people, or they're folks who have an older generation. And there's going to come a time where that particular group of audience is going to shift into the people who are either closer in our age or in that mid 30s or 40s age where we're going to want something different, because the way we digest storytelling right now is through media. And we're reclaiming old ways of doing stories. So those two things are the innovation that are beginning to percolate, and theater companies need to buy into that, I think.
Absolutely. Everyone needs to adapt. And, I can get behind that. I can get on board, kind of my art. I can definitely get on board with that. And that is not to say that we're going to throw everything out the window. That is not what we just need to merge it all together in a very beautiful, interesting way to acknowledge those kind of identities that are hidden. So absolutely, I would love to learn more about Maher. I would love to know more about Samuel Beckett and all those, because they're so influential and they're so inspiring as well. So we're not throwing that out the window. That's a very important thing to clarify to folks when we say that. What is your favorite memory from your time at Paprika pre-COVID, when things were beautiful?
This is gonna be a little bit of a layered answer and story. But when I was in high school, I did this in Canada. In the prairies, they do these one-act festivals that are regional. And I got into a play that went to provincials. I saw this play called Tuesdays and Sundays. And it was an innovative form of storytelling at the time when I received it. And it blew my mind. Fast forward to 2018 when I'm with Claire Preuss. Claire is friends with the two people who created and produced Tuesdays and Sundays. And we had the great opportunity of being in the former Lemon Tree Creation basement studio. And it was me and Bryn and Kevin and Claire. And we got to work with the fantastic actors that are Brendan Chandler and Olivia Croft. And we just got to experiment and watch. That's me, Brendan, Kevin. We got to, or Kobe. We got to watch how we would shift and mold Tuesdays and Sundays, and it was like a synchronous moment because it was something I loved to see, and then it was material I got to work with.
What was the name of the production that you ended up putting out, if there was a production?
In the workshop that day, or my specific.
Did a performance piece come out of it?
It was like an exploration. So Claire was letting us exercise our directing skills. And
I see.
And the play that we got to use was called Tuesdays and Sundays.
I see. I see. I love that. I love that. That's a um I love how like things just went together for you that way. That was so interesting. What are the things that inspire you to create other than people like myself?
I mean, I'm going to say these things that I think you can fit into these categories. Queer people, all queer people, even the weakest among us, um, those queer people too. Sex. My play that I did for the Director's Lab was called Witness of Obsession and Desire, and it was like a polyamorous threesome story, love, sex moment. Lived experiences. I mentioned that that play was based on my past romances, and the after moment of trauma. Not trauma itself, but like what all of us do post a traumatic moment.
I see. Um, yes, I love that, and I love your I love your inspirations. I love to see what your inspirations are, and like specifically as a queer community, there is a lot of, and like sex for us is a very particular form of rebellion, and as well a very particular form of healing, and a very particular form of trauma as well that we, habits that we've associated with it. So again, I'm intrigued to know more about that piece. If you have anything, send it my way, please.
Sure.
What is the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
This is by theater makers. First of all, this advice is by theater teachers, fellow actors in Toronto and in Alberta. And it was also received to me by like casting agents. And that was that I could never be a successful multidisciplinary artist. And I'm actively proving them all wrong.
Oh,
I'm humble though.
no, even you are humble as a person, and I know you are, but like honestly, that statement is not showing off. Well, you can be showing off a little bit, but like that is in essence a rebellion against that system that made them believe you're not worthy. And I appreciate you saying that out loud. I've heard so many things, similar things, like that person is lazy. When I first, like, especially when I first came to Canada, like that by professors, that person is lazy. I didn't think you'll actually be an actor later on. I've heard things in casting rooms like, we'll just hire them, but put them in the background because they're racialized. So these things, I commend you for speaking up about it and for owning that, what people have said about you in a way that's like this in an interview setting.
Thank you.
Who was your biggest role model growing up? You can also answer me for that question too.
Maher, you are definitely a role model in my life.
Yes.
And I think the thing that will always freak out the people that I mentor is when I tell them that they also mentor me. So surprise. Growing up, I grew up, for those of you who don't know, I grew up in a small rural oil field town called Sylvan Lake, Alberta. I was very fortunate to have an English teacher in my high school years. His name is Stephen Neufeld. I think he's in BC now. He's no longer an English teacher. He's a filmmaker. But he changed the entire literature curriculum that we had. He changed to be more inclusive, of like different identities, actually specifically Black identities in African literature. So I learned a lot in that way, from both reading and then watching the teacher take what was given to him and him actively trying to change it so that we could be more well-versed in the world. He was also the one who encouraged me to be a writer. He really encouraged me to be a poet, and I pride myself as a spoken word artist through theater making and storytelling. And he was also just one of those teachers that understood all of my complexities without needing to ask what my identity was.
I love that. That gives me chills. That makes me feel like I'm at home,
Yeah.
And I hope the person, Stephen, was it?
Yeah.
I hope they're listening to this, in their home and just feeling all the feels as well. And thank you, Stephen, for bringing us this amazing human being and artist to our existence. What is one thing that made you who you are today? So that can be an experience that profoundly changed you, a friend, anything that you, or an event, anything that kind of changed your life around.
So this is, I had the opportunity actually to develop a play called Hummingbird through Native Earth Performing Arts for 2 years. It lived as like a stage reading, but it was about, I'm an adoptee, as I mentioned earlier. So it was about me trying to reconnect with my birth mother. And so my birth mother is where my French and Anishinaabe predominantly side comes from. And it was me trying to attempt to meet her and her not being able to show up to meet me that really changed my life. And it changed my perspective on who parents are, and that parents are first people before their parents.
Thank you for sharing that. And if you don't mind me asking, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, is that kind of inspired by your journey? That writing was inspired by also that journey for the play?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes. When I was trying to meet my birth mother, I was at a wedding for my godmother with my mom who raised me.
Cool.
At this wedding. So it was just a whole weekend, a weekend in September in 2017.
I love that. I love that you had, one thing that I'm like hearing as well is that you had a lot of femme folks taking care of you and raising you, which is something that's very nice in kind of considering what you said as well. And I hope that had a great impact on who we are today. I love that. What's a question that you hate being asked? If this is one of them, then I'm sorry.
Could you imagine if I was like, I hate being asked this question? I hate being asked what my background
is. Sorry, say that again.
I hate being asked what my background is or my ethnicity. I hate that question. And the reason why I hate that question is because I am an adoptee. So nothing about me being Chinese or Anishinaabe or Irish or Greek or French or Scottish, none of those countries or nations or people show up in a present way for me. They show up in my past and they are my direction for my future, but they're not a conversation topic. And so when I receive like, what's your background? What's your ethnicity? It's either in the context of that person being racist or that person fetishizing me and then being racist.
Do you find that it's sometimes also in the context of like, oh, I want to be understanding or something? Because I've gotten that question from like random people on dating apps, and I'm like, why, if I don't, like, listen, sometimes if I bring it up myself, I'm like, yeah, because I'm owning it. But if someone else asks me right off the bat, like, what is your ethnicity? What is your ethnic background? I'm like, where did that come from?
It's so funny because in theater and in arts, I like introduce myself and I do the whole identifier line. And I'm like, I know to do stuff. And then in casual environments, when people are asking me that question, or in dating apps, in romantic, sexy times, I'm like, well, what, like, why is that important? And you know what I get? If sometimes I ask them back, I'm like, well, why is that important? I'm like, well, I want to get to know you. And I'm like, interesting. I'm like, I didn't know that even today we still live in a place where our entire ethnicities is an idea of being our whole being. Or they often will be like, oh my God, what a mix. How did that happen? And I'm like, I don't know. People decided to have sex and now I'm here.
Yep. And I personally love when it's like followed with like a comment on your body or your, like in certain situations, like when going back a little bit to like the dating apps or like whatever like fetishization that goes on there, or like even not just in dating apps, like, I like, there's a lot of discussion on like, oh, you know, Arab people are so hairy. Ooh, that's either cool or like, oh, that's not for me. You know, like there's always some sort of intention, but it's a very interesting debate, like how, like also it's an internal debate for us, for you and for me in a different way, obviously, but to kind of think about how we want to present ourselves, how we feel internally, and who we are outside of those labels as well. And there's not enough space to explore that in a safe way. So I definitely hear that. And
Well,
yeah.
if I may too, it's also like, if I share that when I share that I'm Chinese, people, it's not a conversation about getting to know my relationship with my Chinese lineage. It's about being like, oh, I thought you were a different Asian ethnicity. A lot of people associate me with being Filipino. And then when I mention that I'm Anishinaabe, most people don't even know what that is until I say that I'm Indigenous or First Nations. And then when I do, they move the conversation aside. And when I bring up my Irish or Scottish or my Greek or French, no one cares about that because I don't look that part, except for in my beard.
There's so much to say about that. But yes, thank you so much for sharing. And I find it interesting that people in Canada sometimes do not know what Anishinaabe is, and what those kind of things that are, you know, part of the land that you're on, and you're not even aware of their existence or their ancestral existence as well for centuries. So I am shook, and not in a good way.
What
Anyways.
I would say, this is an encouragement to all people anyway, is wherever you are, figure out who is there right now and figure out who was there before. Because that's really I think the question that people are trying to ask when they ask me what my background is. It's like, why Toronto? Why am I here? What am I doing here? But instead they just ask it in a way that's not beneficial to them, really.
Yeah, I mean, acknowledging colonization is not it's not fun for people, but it's necessary. And yes, I agree with that call for action of like, always know where you are, who came before you on this land that you're currently are on. So thank you so much for that. What would your perfect day look like?
Hanlan's Point or any other nude beach with a lot of sun and a lot of water and a lot of great conversations.
I love that. I just can't imagine myself being there right now. What are I have like anyways, we'll send me the huh?
I said I was there last weekend. Or I guess if whatever this premieres, I was there at the end of May.
Yeah, it's very recently. I see your Instagram stories. I'm there. I'm seeing stuff. But that is, I love that. What I was gonna say is like, we'll share tips of places, because I don't know that many. Like I've never been in a lot of cities that had that option, or I don't know. So yes, we'll share.
Show you the beaches of Toronto when we're not making theater.
Okay, perfect. Yes. What does is it okay if I ask more about that?
Yeah.
Perfect. What does that kind of feeling of being in that places, how does that resonate with you? What is that feeling that you get when you're in that perfect place of yours or perfect day of yours?
So there was a period of time from when I was like, this is so strange to compare this to, but there was a period of time from when I was like 2 to when I was 7, 2 years old to 7, and I lived in New Zealand. And so I grew up on the water. And I grew up like 5 minutes from a beach. And when I was a little kid, I would like wake up in the morning before breakfast, before school, and I would run to the beach. I would slam my body into the beach, into the water, into the ocean. And so whenever I get to go to Hanlan's Point, it's like I don't see the city, and I just see the horizon line of Lake Ontario. So it's like that moment, and I'm really realizing that I am a summer sun human. I love being in the sun, and it's also one of the times that I slow down and stop thinking about work. And then I love to be consensually sexual. And I love my body probably the most during the times when I get to be at Hammond's and I just get to be a body and not what I'm wearing and not who I am. I'm just a body in the sun with some really great people most of the time.
100%. I know this is not like you were saying, it's not a comparison, but I love it. It's so childlike when you're just going into the water, when you're just racing into the water and just I know that feeling too well. And what you're saying is inspires a lot of freedom and that feeling of like sensation of bodily freedom. This is, your body and you don't have to be restricted by how you're presenting it. And I'm so shocked that you remember things from like that young. I'm like, what? I only have like very vague images of when I was like, how old were you, did you say?
Well, I don't remember. Okay, so I lived in New Zealand from when I was 2 to 6, and probably the memory that I'm thinking about, I would have been 4 or 5. Of like, I lived in the Bay of Islands in New Zealand in a small little town called Paihia, and my mom owned a Canadian restaurant. She would cook like blueberry pancakes as an example of like what that means, and she would get a shipment of maple syrup from my godmother. And so she would work at the restaurant and I would run to the beach and slam my body into the waves because I was like 3 feet tall.
How do we not talk about these things? That's like, it took an interview for me to know these things about you.
That's because the theater community and the people that I work with really only want to talk about art and how politically sassy I am.
That's true. And I'm at fault at that. Like thanks for calling me out. This interview is over. No, I'm kidding.
I'm also calling out literally all of the theater people that I know who are watching. I'm not going to the beach.
I mean, yeah, that's true. No, I think I'm going to save these questions for later. And I'm just going to ask like random friends all this list of questions. Thank you, Paprika. And thank you, everyone who has contributed to this list. Okay, let's keep going, getting to know you better. What was the biggest lesson you learned at Paprika?
That I can make theater. I can make theater with my friends, and I can tell I can tell a really good story.
We can say that word. No,
I don't know. I wasn't sure. I can make a fucking good story.
Thank you for that thumbs up.
You see how like beep over top of this.
Yeah, they'll edit later. Don't worry about that too much. We're not on television or cable TV. That's fine.
You do.
So what was I forgot the question.
What was my biggest lesson?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that you can do art with your friends in a space. Yes, you can create those spaces yourself. That's a very important thing that I'm learning too. That's I'm on the productions unit and I'm doing a fucking show. That's exciting.
On that note, actually, is that like, I mean, I got to meet so many beautiful people with Paprika, but my 3 actors, Daniel Carter, Tony Tran, and Elizabeth Staples, are 3 people who I'm really close to in various ways now. And the 3 of them post Paprika were like monumental to so many facets of my journey so far. And so like even the actors too that I got to work with were sometimes some of the biggest people who have provided me the best lessons.
100%. 100%. Oh, I can't wait for you and me to do a show together soon. Just putting that out there in the world. What's one piece of advice you'd share with current Paprika participants like myself?
Every venue of work that you will do will inform your storytelling.
Nice. It takes, I'm just gonna wait a second for people to sink that in.
Let me give you some context. So I've been a newspaper person. I've worked at Booster Juice and Tim Hortons. I've worked at Moskies and Eastside Mario's. I used to work at Sketchworking Arts. and I work as a director right now, and I've worked so many other jobs, and the relationships and the people and the lessons and the trauma of those jobs have just totally informed my work ethic and how to be with people. And all of those things are so integral to being a good storyteller.
100%. And when you were listing all those places you've worked, I'm like, working artist, am I right?
Hey.
Well, yeah, I think that's the word that I'm looking for, maybe. But I totally get that. Thank you so much for that advice. I'll cherish it forever in my heart. We're getting into like the last stages. So if you want to confess anything, now the next 5 questions is the time. So this question is a little bit more about my knowledge of you and your kind of practice. You speak a lot about, you know, ancestral impacts on your performance. So I want to know more about that and in general, as our existence as artists. We channel a lot from what our ancestors, even though we've never met them, what they've provided for us and what body they have put us in. So I want to ask if you can speak to all the lovely folks out here watching, just speak a little bit more about that journey and how it impacted your art practice.
Before I came to Toronto, the idea of ancestors was like really abstract and distant from me. And I've had the opportunity to have teachers like Lily and Raven Davis and Nettie Tremblay, Lila Pine, Raven Wings, Catherine Hernandez, who all introduced through performance and storytelling and theater about ancestral work. And I had one person who's none of those people who once looked at me and was like, "Oh my God, you have a lot of ancestors with you at every single given time." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure. That's just what brown queer people say to each other." And this person was like, "No, like you just have you're mixed or something, right?" And I was like, "Oh, like sure, yes, I am." And I like did my whole identifier. She was like, "Your ancestors are so with you." And I was like, "That's cute." I don't know what that means. And then I got to work actually first with Catherine Hernandez, who was like, sometimes our storytelling is always our own, from our own lived experiences and our own creatives and imaginations, but sometimes we're also being spoken through with by a different ancestor. And sometimes our ancestors are dickheads. And sometimes our ancestors are super sage, ethereal people. And sometimes our ancestors are young people who didn't get to continue along their life. And when that reminded me that our ancestors were people, and that our ancestors were complex and messy in all of the different timelines and navigations that they had to do. And that gave me so much reassurance. And I always try to bring folks like you and other people back to their lineage in some ways, to be like, you may not have a good relationship with your family or your own self, but there are people who made you. There's like when I think about myself, I'm like, there was a Scottish person, an Irish person, a French person, an Anishinaabe person, and a Chinese person from across the world. These are different continents who all decided to have a sexy time. And for my sexiness in art, all had a sexy time with each other and made me.
Yes.
I'm like, just remember that. All of my beautiful interracial people who come from different backgrounds, and you're choosing to procreate with other people. You are creating new mixed messes, like me.
100%.
I will say that it's an ongoing journey, and I'm thinking a lot about my ancestors paving a way for me to be a mixed race baby and to like do this work. I don't get to be just an Anishinaabe person, even though people just look at me as that. I don't get to just be a Chinese person. And I don't get to be all of the other white settler backgrounds that I come from. All of them show up and surface, and all of my ancestors and the way that they show up in me are undeniable. I can deny my community or my friends or myself or the reality of the systems that we live in, but my ancestors refuse to be ignored.
1000%. I'm so happy I asked that question. I and I want to say that, like being mixed usually is just brushed off as another ethnic identity, and people don't realize how complex a mixed identity is. Like it's like I feel like it's a lot of people just count it as, okay, yeah, you're either Arab, Black, mixed, but like there's a lot of, it's a specific identity that people simplify often, that I think is, yeah, like you were saying, it's very important to, you always, even when you asked me last time, when you were interviewing me last time, you asked me those questions, and that's why I'm like, I'm asking Ty that question again this time, is because you left me thinking a lot about what, ancestry means, and what my ancestors, I don't even know how far back Lebanese goes in me. I found out recently that I also am, my ancestors went to Morocco, were Moroccan originally. So I'm like, I don't even know that far back. And I want to know more. And I'm very curious to know
What
more.
too is I can't quite remember which of my specifically Indigenous teachers in Toronto that I've had the opportunity to learn this from, but the concept and the idea and practice of the mindfulness practice of thinking like 7 generations behind us, which is where I think a lot of us live. But then I'm like, every single thing that I do right now, I'm going to affect 7 generations after me. And that's the thing in that storytelling that I've been stuck on the most, is I'm like, every single thing I do is gonna affect 7 different generations who are not even gonna see what this world looks like right now.
100%. I love that empathy that you bring into ancestral knowledge. I love it. I like, you look at it, like you say, even the ones who wear dicks. I love that. Thank you so much for speaking about that. What is one valuable skill you left with after Paprika?
Producing.
Producing?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I hate to break it to all of my writers and actors, but you're gonna have to learn to be a producer. You gotta. It's just part of the job.
Yes, yes. Especially with creating our own stories and our own narratives for 7 generations ahead. Okay, next question is about mentorship. And that is also something that I personally wanted to chat with you about. How valuable do you think, as artists, the idea of mentorship, being mentored and mentoring is, and specifically like for marginalized folks who don't have a lot of role models in modern mainstream media? So yeah, how do you think mentorship plays a role in that? How important do you think mentorship is?
I think mentorship is really complicated. I never declared myself first a mentor. Other people, whether my own mentors or the people I mentor, defined me with that name as mentor. And so I think, as marginalized people, that's one thing that we have to. That's one thing that I think we may get called into doing without wanting to do. Is that we, as marginalized people, will oftentimes become mentors who have been seeking mentorship. I also think, and to like answer like how valuable, it's so valuable. I'm specifically on a journey of like trying to connect with my, I guess, more pan-Asian and pan-Indigenous, because I don't always find the right Anishinaabe or Chinese mentors that I may want, whatever that means. But I'm also noticing too that elders or leaders or people who are ahead in their artistry, who come from other marginalized communities, they're also my teachers. We're so globalized. Like the call to the recognition of like this capitalist world that we live in, and a call to decolonize, all of those things are so valid. But one thing that I don't think we'll be able to leave ever again is the fact that we're all now interconnected. And so something that I'm beginning to trying to figure out and like jam in my own mind space and with my own mentors about is how to find other mentors from other marginalized communities who can inform me about things that I would have never known. And a lot of the times the people that you mentor also through their own learning and artistic and personal journeys, their beings, their experiences, their ways of communicating with you become a mentorship in and of itself. And so I would find that it's so valuable, but it's more valuable to recognize that there are mentors who have chosen you, there are mentors who you are choosing, and there are mentors who you are mentoring who are your mentors.
I will write that down to think about later. Yes, and I'm one of them, I hope, because you have been a mentor figure for me since like 2019, since I met you. And that is something that I so appreciate. And yes, like I remember when I first came to Canada, actually, I wasn't very aware of like socially aware of like, identity politics. I did not know how I'm different from whiteness, how I'm different from that, how I'm different from this. And when I say whiteness, I say like Canadian, European, Eurocentric kind of whiteness. So I wasn't aware of all those dynamics. And often those who provided opportunity for me were not those people, were not that category of people. It was other marginalized ethnic identities that I did not belong to. I was once cast by, I don't know if you know Vanessa Jav, but she was producing a production of Dreamgirls, and like all the cast was either like was mostly Black, except for like 3 people in it. And I was one of them. And she took me on just to mentor me, just to show me what musical theater is like. And, those opportunities, they're very, like you wouldn't, that, I don't know. It was just a moment, one of these moments where like, it was nice to be joining another community that I do not have the same experience as, but that kind of saw me as someone who they can teach and learn from. I love that, and I love being engaged in that. So thank you for talking about how other marginalized identities can be your mentors as well, especially in Paprika and mentorship. It's a very basic foundational component of the program. So yes. So anyways, so much to say, but we're moving on to the next question. So we are from a younger generation of artists right now in the city, and you have always been very fluent and keen about intergenerational learning, and you also have this program. I don't know if you want to talk about it or pitch it in here, where like you talk with other queer elders. And so that's why I wanted to ask you this question about, what would you like to communicate with other generations, with older generations of theater makers that have paved the way for us, or are still paving the way for us as well? Whether they're from our same kind of identities or different kind of identities. What would you say to those older generations?
Woo.
Tough question.
First, let me do a little plug.
Yes.
I'm very blessed and fortunate to be working with Leslie Lee Kam, a prolific elder in the Toronto queer community, in 2 different streams of an intergenerational project, both under the umbrella of Buddies in Bad Times Youth Elders Project. One as a host for the In Conversation series, where I get to work with an intergenerational group of people. And then another one where we're producing a podcast, which is coming up in June, with Leslie Lee Kam, Roma Spencer, Naomi Bain, S. Bear Bergman, and then under the like tutelage of Daniel Carter and Aiden, who also works there. I can't remember Aiden's name. Or Aiden's last name. I'm so sorry, Aiden. It's escaping me. But in those projects, I have learned a lot, and I'm constantly learning a lot. I'm gonna preface what I'm about to say by being like, I am aware of the history that is present for intergenerational people in this country, and in theater, and I am aware of the risks that were taken in different ways, I am aware of like marginalized and specifically racialized communities not being afforded and sometimes often facing abuse to even do theater storytelling. I think about Jenny Luzon, who tried to do a play at Theatre Passe Muraille in her youth as a theater creator, and no one came to see the show. But all of the tickets were bought by the Theatre Passe Muraille membership, and so like that. So I understand all of those complexities, and I will say boldly and arrogantly, you should have dismantled theater with more confidence, more gusto, and more support. Theater people who are older perpetrated trauma and violence. And I hope for all of the theater people who are older, who are struggling to hear harsh and sometimes even ignorant and arrogant critiques, for an abundance of therapy and healing. These answers are gonna get me flat.
Okay, we'll talk to Paprika about editing after this interview.
I'm saying I feel confident in, so long as Paprika and you also feel confident in what I'm saying.
Yes, no, I hear what you have to say. And they have like the generations before us. I was talking to Theatre Passe, who's also a very amazing artist that I'm just getting to introduce to. And
he was the first director I talked to in the city.
What? Say that again.
So he was the first director I talked to in the city.
No way.
Yeah. I invited him under, actually, well, I guess really the first director I talked to was Evelyn Perry, but she wasn't directing me. And she was like, you need to go talk to other people. I was like, okay. So he was doing a show at Buddies and Bad Times, and I emailed him, and I was like, can I just talk to you? Because I want to be a director, and I want to be a theater maker, and I want to eventually work with you. And so he met me at the Second Cup, that's just south of the Buddies and Bad Times that used to be in the Marriott. And we just talked about theater, and it was so great.
He has such a comfortable voice to him and comfortable presence. I just had my first mentorship session with Paprika. He's my Paprika mentor. And he had a very lovely energy. But we talked about this. We talked about intergenerational kind of learning. And he was speaking about how, the steps that they took were much harder and much tougher because of the society, but like little by little started changing. Yeah, but as you were saying, there's a need to like have more radical change. Yes.
I also like a challenge to, so I'm 28. I'm turning 28 in a few months in November. I'm turning 28 in November. Everyone who's 28 and older than me right now, my biggest challenge, and I keep trying to present them, is do not give up on the obsessive journey of learning. Because I find that the ways in which we fall into systems or exhaustion or burnout is because the generations before us wanted to eventually stop learning. And my commitment as a mentor and as an artist is to not stop learning.
Mm-hmm. It's tough. It's tough. Mm-hmm. It's a tough commitment, but it's necessary as well. So thank you for that. Outside of the Paprika world, tell us a little bit about what is next for Ty. What should we be looking out for? I want to know, give a shout out to you and your work, because I know you're so well versed and well, rounded as an artist. So tell us where can we see you? What's next for you?
That's a really good question. I guess I'm saying this existing in May, knowing that this might exist in June. I have a radio play that's going to premiere in June called Mix. It's about my first boyfriend in Toronto and all of the communities I herald from, being produced by Alberta Queer Calendar Project in the Prairies. But it's going to be live and virtual, and I really want all of the people that I'm close with to listen to the story, especially all the people who are in theater. I don't know, I just think I want them to listen. So that's coming up next. I'm a lead facilitator in this fantastic residency that's being put on by Sketchworking Arts and the Bentway called Queering Place Residency, where we get to make a medicine garden, queer gathering place in Garrison Commons, and so I started that this week. That'll show itself in October. I'm performing for different Pride events because it's June. I'm very fortunate to be producing for a emerging artist stage called Bloom, that historically was a youth stage, formerly known as Fruit Loops. And then I'm also producing this fantastic show with this beautiful creator named Weird Alice called Thirst Nation Show. And it's a show celebrating, it's a show for making space for all aspects of queer and two-spirit Indigenous people, wanting to just celebrate being Indigenous to Turtle Island. And it features performances in drag and burlesque, and it's just super fun and great. And for Pride, we're doing a Pride edition on June 18th, and hopefully that'll just keep taking off. And if someone is an Indigenous, queer, or two-spirit person and you want to perform for this show, just reach out to me. There's no stipulations besides just being queer as hell and Indigenous as hell.
I see. Yeah, so Paprika put all this information in the description of the video. Yes, I'm so excited, but like obviously, like text me all those things for me personally because I want to be there. I can't wait for your play reading, the radio reading. Yeah, I'm so excited, and I'm so happy to see, part of the reason why I asked this question is because it's so important for people who are doing Paprika now to see, or in the future, to see where Paprika alumni are and how it is possible for someone like you to be able to reach that level of success. It's so promising for us babies, for us kids, to know these things. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay, last question. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay, this next question is finishing the sentence. So I'll give you a prompt and you'll have to finish the sentence with any words of your choice. So the sentence is, the future of theater is
inevitable and storytelling post-revolution.
Boom! Yes, that's amazing. What a way to end this 20 for 20 series of questions for 20th Paprika anniversary. I'm so happy with how the interview went. I'm so happy that they chose you and me to do this because I'm so like, this was amazing. And I hope everyone watching at home would see kind of the important messages that you were sending across and the importance of Paprika as well, and the importance of other programs in the city for people to check out. Lastly, before I give you the last words, I want to say that check out Paprika Festival. It will feature me. It will feature a lot of great artists as well. I didn't tell you this time, but for my production, I'm doing like an international collaboration because we're digital, so we can do that. So I'm like collaborating Lebanon to Canada, a co-production, and that's exciting. I'm so excited for this. Can you believe it? Like, say that again.
I said, I'm so excited for you.
Me too. Like, I wasn't even imagining that it's possible. Check out Paprika. There's a huge line, like a big and promising lineup of performances. So make sure to check that out, and make sure to check Sloane. Sloane, is there something that you want to say before we wrap this interview up?
Yeah, sure. All emerging and brand new artists start somewhere. Every artist that you love that is prolific started in a place where probably they didn't get as much support and opportunity and platform like these fantastic Paprika artists get. So support them now because they will remember your support later.
100%. 100%. Support the artists. Support the community.